and new undisputed.
Welcome to Harry's Hook. I am a journalist, big fan of boxing. I've written published articles on it. I also train and spar. Dmitry Bivol, the new undisputed champion, has etched his name in light heavyweight history. This time, he triumphed over Artur Beterbiev in a competitive rematch that had momentum shifts, uncanny parallels with their first contest, as well as critical differences. We're going to talk about that in today's video, analyze the fight, and discuss what we learned about these two titans. Their first battle was a tight contest where Bivol got off to a hot start, while Beterbiev was the avalanche that picked up momentum in the middle and finished strong in the championship rounds. The first half of the rematch had echoes of their prior contest, with Bivol winning the first few rounds, a furious exchange at the end of the third, Beterbiev then dominating round 4 and building momentum in the middle portion. But how Bivol responded was a critical difference in the final act, ultimately changing his fate in the rematch. Both boxers made adjustments for the encore. We saw Bivol from the get-go was more intent on holding his ground by using his footwork, jab, physical strength, and sharp counters. Beterbiev started quicker than he did last time and was throwing more punches to the body, a good adjustment from the first fight I and others had called for. Right away, I noticed he made at least some use of the left hook downstairs. I can hardly recall any instances where he threw it in the first fight. In fact, both boxers increased their attention on the body, according to the CompuBox stats. But another insight from the data, which I pointed out prior to the rematch, is that in the first fight, Bivol's jab activity plummeted after round 3, which also coincides with when Beterbiev's momentum was picking up. In the rematch, we didn't see that same jab drop off. It also looked like in this bout, Bivol threw his jab with more conviction, as we saw Beterbiev's head snap back over and over. But Dmitry's win came down to much more than just his brilliant jab. I saw more conviction in his punches overall. He held his position better, limited Beterbiev's forward momentum and chain attacks, made more use of his pendulum bounce while incorporating counters. In fact, countering Beterbiev's jab was key to Bivol's success in both fights. One particular sequence we saw a number of times in the first bout and in the rematch was when Bivol would parry down Beterbiev's jab, clearing the lane for a counter cross. It was a fundamental counter for Bivol, and Artur at times was able to take advantage by baiting Dmitry and countering the counter. A fascinating moment here in round 9, where Bivol starts to go for the parry counter, but spots Beterbiev's incoming cross and changes course. This fundamental sequence and the counter stacking was at the center of a lot of their high-level chess. Let's talk about a major weapon for Beterbiev, his right hook, and how he tried to incorporate some misdirection in order to land it. It starts with his footwork. Typically, you step forward with the front foot, then bring up the back foot. This kind of movement keeps your base solid, but is also easier to spot. Beterbiev frequently likes to slide up his back foot, then step in with the front foot. It leaves you more vulnerable with a less stable base as you close the gap, but it can also be a sneakier way to get in range, especially when paired with punches. Artur would often use a touch shot to distract while bringing up his back foot, then penetrating with the lead step while changing levels and throwing a right hook, causing Dmitry to protect his body, but instead, the hook came upstairs. Artur helped set it up by also targeting the body in the same way. Beterbiev's avalanche grew in rounds 4 and 5, and while commentating on the fight, I thought he could ultimately be heading for a stoppage win. Another left hook to the body there by Beterbiev. A right, oh my goodness, okay. I mean, Bivol looks okay, but maybe not. But a key difference in this bout is that Bivol never let both hands off the wheel, so to speak. That is, off Beterbiev's skull. While there were times Artur got ahead of steam going, instead of taking a decidedly defensive posture like he did at times in their prior bout, Bivol gave less ground, returned fire, and remained a threat, preventing Beterbiev's rallies from turning into riots. We see an example in round 5 when Artur had been stepping up his attack. Here, he throws a double jab cross and Bivol beats him to the punch with a hard 1-2 that stopped Beterbiev in his tracks, at least momentarily. Artur absorbed a whole lot of clean shots, and while he didn't appear badly hurt at any point, it was enough to make him second guess and hesitate, even at times when he had an opening to attack, like here in round 10. But I want to zero in on a hugely consequential part of the fight, round 6. Beterbiev had built momentum in rounds 4 and 5. The 6th had been competitive, but then Beterbiev turned up the heat and was starting to get rolling again. This was a crucial moment where Bivol made a stand. Every time Artur tried to get his offense going, Dmitry would fire and not let him take the initiative. Here we see Beterbiev provoke and pull back from a Bivol cross and attempt to counter. Bivol turns and fires a sharp right as Beterbiev barely lifts a jab. Yet it's Dmitry who gets knocked back, showing just how ludicrous Artur's power is. Furthermore, this right hand at the end of the round should have dropped Bivol or badly hurt him. He did not see it coming, but he took it extremely well. And that wasn't the only time. In order to hold his ground, fire more punches, and earn Artur's respect, Bivol had to risk getting caught. And he did. In fact, to my eye, he got caught with more solid, clean blows in this fight than in their first encounter. But he took the power better here. That, to me, is all about Bivol's mentality. I'm going to talk about that more in a moment and why it's so important. But first, if you enjoyed this content, come on, do me a solid, like this video, and if you want to stay updated on my latest analysis, commentary, live streams, subscribe to the channel. Like I said, to my eye, Bivol took more solid, clean power blows in this fight, yet he absorbed Artur's power better. I believe that's due to his mentality. Bivol did take some risks in the first bout, but also took decidedly defensive postures for extended periods. He talked about training camp being better heading into this fight because he felt less pressure and was no longer undefeated. He had already tasted Artur's vaunted power and endured it. In order to win this fight, not just compete and survive, he had to be willing to step into the fire. He had to be willing to stay in the pocket and trust his defense and ultimately trust his chin. It's not a perfect comparison, but it's somewhat similar to what Canelo did in his rematch against Gennady Golovkin. After taking a decidedly defensive posture for stretches of their first battle, in the rematch, Canelo held his ground, stayed in the pocket under fire, and ultimately trusted his defense and his chin against a skilled heavy hitter. I thought Bivol's performance in their first contest was excellent, nearly perfect. I did not think that he'd be able to duplicate it, let alone surpass it. I was wrong. We learned what truly peak Dmitry Bivol looks like. One whose physical talents, skill, ring IQ, mental strength, and confidence are at their zenith. And with Artur Beterbiev, I had to see him lose in order to believe it. So I learned that Beterbiev has his limits. And some could chalk this up to Beterbiev aging now that he's 40. And there may be a kernel of truth. But nothing can be taken away from Bivol with this victory. Artur looked extremely dangerous in there, but Dmitry put on a masterclass. So even the most hardened Beterbiev fans need to just give Bivol his flowers here. He was dragged into deep waters and somehow found another gear, showcasing elite stamina and mental strength to go along with the sublime skills. When I think about the light heavyweight division, Sergey Kovalev had his reign that was ended by the great Andre Ward, who had moved up from super middle and retired on top, with Artur and Dmitry waiting in the wings. What I see here is that after Kovalev and Ward, in 2017-2018, the light heavyweight division entered this era of a two-headed dragon. Artur gained the upper hand over time by obtaining 3 of the belts. A few may crow about Adonis Stevenson, who had some great knockouts, but after 2015, he just wasn't active enough. And in 2018, he was defeated by Alexander Gvozdyk, who was subsequently stopped by Beterbiev. With Artur and Dmitry, We have two historically great boxers, forged in the Soviet system with clashing styles and attributes, but both highly skilled and determined. The sole blemish on each of their records is fittingly by the other man. This era had been their reign atop the division, with a great chasm separating them from all the rest. And now, with each warrior holding a victory over his compatriot, we're teed up to settle the score with an all-time great light heavyweight trilogy. And that right there is Harry's Hook. Let me know what you think in the comments. Who did you have winning the fight? How do you see the trilogy playing out? What do you want next for the division?